Thank you. How are you guys doing?
Good.
All right. So we're going to talk about something that is very important in Florida. This ticking bomb. You know, you have a lot of these ponds all over the landscape, and a lot of people don't really know what they are and why they're there. So my first talk will pretty much focus on why they're there, why they're useful, and what they became this ticking bomb. So how many people here actually live nearby a pond or a lake? What people call them lake. Oh, quite a bit. So you'll be interested. All right, so why do we have this pond? Well, I got to go back in time prior to when we actually had people in the landscape. And so pre-urbanization, you know, you had like here, Corkscrew, very beautiful landscapes and no humans yet. And you know, when it rains, the rain falls during the rainy season. I don't know, this year it's a bit peculiar, right? And as time to infiltrate them, the vegetation captures some of it, some of the water, you know, infiltrate, get filtered, and recharge the aquifer. During the rainy season, you know, then you have sheet flow like we have right now, and we also have some filtration, you know, the marsh filter it, and you also have nutrient uptake by the vegetation as well. We know all of that. Now, post-urbanization, you know, would drastically have modified the landscape, and that's why urban ecology is really a hot topic now, because we no longer living in a natural landscape. The natural landscape is actually within us, and we have to manage it. So we have a lot of roads, you know, houses, and we call them impervious surfaces. And now, when it rains, you know, the water, the timing of the water is different, meaning that the water will not have time to infiltrate. It will eventually flush off what it's not supposed to. It's supposed to infiltrate and recharge the aquifer. And you know, you also bring in a lot of nutrients. So you have changed the timing of the water and the nutrient loading into the natural system, especially the bay. So you have eventually sheet flow, and you know, you have nutrient fresh water, which could be a pollutant, because if you're getting too much fresh water at point sources, you know, you're diluting the salt water environment, and then you have problems, for example, for coral reefs. And metals as well, as well as dust. All right, so why do we have these ponds? Well, we have different systems that we have implemented in Florida, and a lot of people know about green technologies, and green technology are used to clean the water quite efficiently. And the best of all is a filter marsh. And you have, for example, some of those in stormwater treatment areas. Everybody knows stormwater treatment areas? Well, these are the constructed wetlands south of Lake Okeechobee, and we capture the nutrient and filter it out. So that technology is supposed to prevent the nutrient from entering the everglades. Well, if you look a little bit west of Lake Okeechobee, we have a similar design, which are these ponds. And these ponds actually are doing a green treatment, where basically the water as a nutrient will get into the pond, all right, and the pond will keep these nutrients for a certain amount of time until when it's time to release it during the rainy season. The water will overflow and then will escape the pond. The other thing that you're going to have is you're also recharging the aquifer. So basically the pond acts as a reservoir where you keep the water has time to infiltrate, recharge the groundwater. All right, you have green technology, so plants and algae that will polish the water, clean it, and during the rainy season, that water eventually will escape if we have a detention pond, and we'll get to that, and we'll release it to the natural system. So, who's been to detention before? That's cool. All right, so I have. So I know that when I'm being detained, I'm being released at some point. So you have two types of ponds: the retention and the detention. The retention basically have no real outlet, no overflow box. So they only overflow during the rainy season when the overflow box is filled and then the water escapes. The retention pond have actually the water that stay there and then only recharge the aquifer. All right, and the idea is that 80% of the water that will be released will be 80% clean. So it's not perfect. I mean, we would love to have wetlands, but unfortunately, in Southwest Florida, we have ponds, and ponds are not as good as wetlands to polish the water and clean it very well. But a lot of people, I know probably not you, but a lot of regular people don't want to live in the middle of the Everglades. I have that all the time because I say, well, you know, it would be better off by having a lot of plants, and they say, well, I didn't move from X and X to actually live in the middle of the Everglades, the middle of the swamp, it's full of snakes, etc. So you'll see that part of my program is actually educating the people so they know that what a pond should be. But anyway, so 80% clean fresh water. So here is a little bit, if you are interested about why we have this pond. This is a chapter that basically said since 1980s that you have to build these ponds when you actually build a development. All right, so you have these impervious surfaces, you have to have your pond. And so they prevent erosion, they allow siltation. So basically, you know, you have the water moving with silt. Since you have a pond, it's also a decantation pit. So basically, the sediment will settle down to the bottom. You'll filtration, recharge the aquifer, and basically, it's good for outstanding Florida waterways, you know, the natural systems downstream of this pond. All right, so this is basically what it's supposed to do. 80 to 95% reduction of the pollutant load. So you have TSS, total suspended solids, the particulates, you know, 75 to 85. Total nitrogen, total phosphorus, you know, that depends, but it does remove some, and metals as well. And again, it slows down also the water runoff, as I mentioned, so you know, you're releasing it at the right time, so you don't overload your bay. Okay, so that's what it's supposed to do. All right, now how many do we have? Because a lot of people ask me, well, it's not a small footprint. You know, we talked this morning, I was listening to NPR on the radio, and they say, well, you know, the Caloosahatchee River is polluting. Well, I said, let's compare it to our pond. Well, I took basically all the students that I had at the time, and some of them actually are in this room, and they basically tack on Google Earth all the detention point. All right, and then they also measure the contour and the surface area. And they were able to come up with maps. So that's basically a map showing where you have most of these ponds, and they're close to the coast. So that's, you know, there's supposed to be a buffer, so that's good. And this is for here Lee County. In total, we have about 10,000 of these ponds. And when you combine them all together, that's about 1.5 times the surface area of the Caloosahatchee River. So it's not a small footprint when you actually combine them all together. All right. Okay, so this is a perfect pond, the one I like. So what you have here is you know, a lot of vegetation, which I have a pre-treatment here for basically to prevent the nutrient from entering the pond. You have some filtration, slow down the pace of the water. Then you have some riparian vegetation here on the littoral shelf, and then you have the algae that's just supposed to polish whatever finally ends up into the pond. But really, the most important is to have this treatment before, and then, you know, it goes up to the food chain, so you have, you know, up to the bass, and you have sedimentation here happening. All right, so here this is another way to look at it. I wasn't sure really what would be the audience, so I have to the level of ecology here. So we have here the private producer in these ponds, which mainly capture most of the nutrients, and then it goes up to the food chain, and that's called the bottom up. And you also have the top-down control here. Just saying that because some people have unrealistic expectations where they say, I want a lot of bass, but I don't want the plant or the algae. Well, it can't happen, guys, you know? So this is basic ecology. And you know what? Basically focusing a lot about these nutrients. All right, so what people, and I know my audience here is all sold out for this kind of pond, but generally when I talk to a homeowner association, I say, which one do you like? This one or this one? This one, this one, this one, and they said, oh no, I like this one, because they come from up north where they have glacial lakes, right? And that's what they want. Green grass, getting to the edge of the water, pretty much devoid of vegetation, clear water, copper sulfate green, we'll talk about that. And then, you know, that's what they want. Okay. All right, so these guys moved, they're not from here, all right? Me neither, but they moved down here. And what they do is, let's get rid of these plants. And when they get rid of these plants, these guys here, they open a big space, and now lots of sunlight reaches the littoral shelf, and you have the good, healthy periphyton, so these attached algae that grow like the Indian Everglades. And they call me and they say, oh, I got a problem. Okay, I said, no, you have no problem. Yes, I do. It looks like CRIP. Okay. Well, this is actually good stuff. This is actually scum, and all scum is not bad. And that you can educate them about the good periphytons that are supposed to grow when the water is clear, when you have no vegetation. All right. That's from my former periphyton lab over at FIU. This is a little video we made with Slide, educating the high school and middle school students when they actually take a walk in the swamp, and shows them, that they're important. They're, important for the whole food web to be healthy. We need the periphyton so that it goes up to the food chain. All right, so very important stuff. Because they don't like it, so the thing that they do is spray it with copper sulfate. By the way, if you're interested to know why the Everglade grows so much periphyton with very, very little nutrient, this is an excellent article, by the way. All right, so periphyton very good. I'll start this because I see my clock sticking here. But basically, they kill it, all right, with algicide, copper sulfate-based algicide. And then you have this massive amount of nutrient that are being released. That's one way you're actually getting to the nasty pond with a lot of algae proliferation. There's another way you can have this as well. People love grass. And grass is not from here. We know turf is, the #1 grown actually plant in Florida. And I especially like this, lawns made are world greener. It's actually from the Florida SOD sod cellar or grower comparative. But so basically, they grow a lot of sod, and they want that all around. It looks like it's the ultimate goal, having a lush, thick grass, full of nutrient, full of iron, and using a lot of pesticide to make it happy and mow it often. So, of course, it's not from here, so to make it happy, you have to pamper it very, very much and use a lot of these bad practices that you do. So when you're surrounding this pond, which sometimes also they use reclaimed water, and reclaimed water is bad because it's got nutrients, and the plants especially need water during the dry season, but they don't need the nutrient because they're dormant. So the plant cannot uptake this nutrient, and eventually they end up into the pond, sometimes directly or sometimes indirectly after the first flush during the rainy season. Then they make this very highly convoluted pond. Pond actually becomes a lake. It becomes an attraction. If you have a front view property, your front view property has a 10 to 25%. They don't even go on the lawn. They just want to have the view. And basically, you end up with this nightmare, super convoluted pond, which has a lot of shoreline, meaning a lot of grass, meaning a lot of nutrient getting into the pond. Crazy. Anyway, so you end up with this, right? Lots of algae proliferation next to the edge because you have leaching. You see you have no plants grown, just the grass. You have very bad erosion, and the pond is no longer really fulfilling its role. All right, this is a more picture here. All right, and they call me, I got a bloom. I said, yes, now you do. All right, so this is what happened. All right, this is some pictures from these ponds, and they suppress them also with using copper sulfate. The other way to also, control the algae. So you control either the good algae with copper sulfate, you're adding nutrient, or you kill the bad algae, and you're also adding nutrient with your grass, and etc. So lots of nutrients are ending up into this pond. And the main culprit is copper sulfate. 6 more minutes. All right, the problem is that copper sulfate makes a crack at it. And why did I say that? Because copper sulfate is cheap. It offers a very quick fix, but it also makes the pond dependent upon copper sulfate because it kills the organism that actually controls the algae, such as the zooplankton and the bivalves that will filter the water, because copper sulfate has toxic on them, either directly or indirectly through the larvae. All right, so basically here what you can see is that when you're suppressing the grazer, you have no ways to controlling your base, and then you have proliferation. You got to use copper sulfate, and it's an endless cycle. And you're killing these algae, they recycle nutrients, and etc., and it goes back to the water. Now this is just a quick showing that they use a very broad array of different pesticides, algicides. But when you look at the chlorophyll concentration, it pretty much does whatever it wants. Basically, these ponds are so thick that you just use them, they don't really respond much to the amount of pesticide you add into the water, which kind of new already. All right, and then you have, because you're killing so many of these vegetation and algae, you have sedimentation in the pond, which is very organic, as you can see here. My student calls this chocolate mousse. It doesn't have a smell of it, neither nor the taste. You get a lot of phosphorus content. This is a lake down in Naples, city of Naples. or they have a lot of copper as well because they accumulate in the sediment, and eventually they actually reach that retention rate, which was supposed to be 80%, positive number, now we're getting minus. This is one of the worst cases I have seen. One of the ponds in Naples, minus 190%. So those are pollution ponds, no longer cleaner. And then when you look at Naples Bay and you look at the amount of copper sulfate, you have tremendous amount of copper sulfate, and the hot spot here is actually a culvert that drained the canal where the pond's empty. So we know it's coming from the ponds. Just to give you an idea, 3.7 microgram per liter is actually the threshold value. I've measured Pelican Bay, for example, 1,700 microgram per liter of copper exceeding the ponds, and that's getting directly into the bay. Now the problem will not be solved because, as you know, we're building more and more, and we have more and more and more of these ponds. This is just a projection here. I don't know where we are. That's 2013 when we ended, but you can see it's pretty much exponential. All right, so what do? Well, we fight back with all these entities here. We actually try to educate the homeowner, especially the people who come down here and say, well, this is what your pond's supposed to be. You didn't move next to a lake. You moved to a green water treatment facility, a retention or detention pond, which is supposed to be a buffer to protect the ecosystem downstream. All right, and we give them also alternatives. We use filtration wetlands, which are floating islands. So we basically they don't want wetlands, but they're okay to have floating islands. So basically you have vegetation growing on floating mats, and then the roots, we have actually a paper in the way with Dana Dittmar, uptake nutrient, harbor good bacteria, and also release chemicals that control the algae. And then we said turf is not the good alternative to ground cover. You have other alternatives that are much more beautiful. You'll spend much more time at the beach with your children instead of mowing and doing the manicure on your lawn and removing the bad weed and spending a lot of money. You can actually have very good what we call them rain garden, which basically captures, so it's basically a filtration device that captures the runoff before it enters the pond. The pond is really the last resort to actually remove the nutrient. This is another here, where you can see that all the gutter runoff is actually getting into that very beautiful rain garden. That's Naples. And you can do also a lot of planting, even around golf courses. Some golf courses now do a lot of planting, even though people complain, I cannot find my golf ball. Well, but at least we have some nice quiet vegetation that does filter. We also have, where you have culvert, we actually do a lot of planting. This is from Mike Bauer here, do a lot of planting all around. This is actually Lake Trafford, but I just wanted to show that picture because it looks like planting's fun. All right, so that work would not have been possible with a plethora of students who actually dedicated their time and effort. All right, it's just a short list here, and all the people who actually gave me money to do this. And it's not the state, it's not the federal, it's actually private funding. Thank you.
I'll take a couple questions for Serge, if anyone has any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So is the island that you showed there, is that the solution to the damage process?
Not the solution. It's part of a one way to remove nutrient. The only problem with the island is that they're very high maintenance. And people say, oh, we just put an island, and then wait, no, because when the plant goes old, they don't uptake nutrient as well. They really have to be in their fast-growing phase. All right. So and people don't like the view. People really want to have that open, glassy view. Wayne.
Sorry I was late, buddy.
It's okay.
I don't think I've seen that data before about some of the ponds now being a point source for pollution downstream. That's really powerful. Do you have any sense of what the solution to that is? I mean, are we going to be dredging ponds like Lake Trafford? Is that, or are there other solutions to that?
Well, a lot of people are looking at solution, and basically, this is what I said to the people I work with. I say, well, you can dredge. That's expensive. That's traumatic. We've seen it with Lake Trafford. We're not really sure what's going to happen. In Lake Trafford, for example, it looks like we end-capped the sediment, and now we have gushing groundwater coming from the bottom. So, and that's actually a new paradigm of my research. We actually have lots of groundwater exchanges with this pond. So it could even make it worse. A lot of people are using aeration, so basically they use these bubblers that provide oxygen to the bacteria, which at the muck level will digest that muck and release nutrients. And that's also an issue, but I said if you're doing the right thing after that, I think I'm okay with this. You know, you're trying to fix your muck issue, and this nutrient will eventually escape to the bay, but after that, you're doing the right thing. And the other way as well is now a new, I received a bunch of phone calls about bacteria. And I'm really not sure about that. It could be the new snake oil, I have no idea, but there's some new research that need to be done where people say, oh, I have 20% muck reduction, but it's never been published, it's never been taken rigorously, so I don't know if it will be.
Do you think if we harvested the islands, have you done any sort of nutrient
They
budgets?
do. They're supposed to do. They're supposed to every 2 months, remove the plants and compost it or recycle it. Yeah, it's high maintenance for these islands. Yes, sir.
Your last graph had the exponential movement in the future of future ponds. It seems like whatever you may try to do, the problem is insurmountable if you have exponential growth in ponds in the future.
This is true, and actually, I've learned just recently that Eden Geyser, Kerwin, and the inventor of this pond, which is Harvey Harper, are supposed to meet together because Harvey wants to make them deeper, and Evelyn wants to make them shallower so that they're more like wetlands. And I think if we do have a system which looks like more like a wetland, we probably will have a much better retention. We also know that dry detention ponds, basically ditches, work much better than a regular pond. I mean, the people are really attracted by the fact that they like to have the view on the water, and that really adds, and that's solid data for my students, 10 to 15% more of your real estate. So, and the really funny thing is that people don't even venture around this pond. They don't even walk on it. It's just a visual feature. Yes, sir.
Serge, it seems like there's a big discrepancy from a regulatory context between what the design is supposed to presume to do versus what it does do. And the district passed an impaired waters rule last summer that has additional criteria so that it cannot increase loading beyond the background level. So with that new criteria, do you think that's better than what's going on now in your opinion? And do you think it's working? Well,
so my opinion is that we should really move away from ponds and vegetate them as much as possible. And if we could just have wetlands instead of ponds, that would be better. I mean, I'm happy to see that. The main problem is that none of these ponds are being surveyed to see if they actually meet the criteria that were set. And again, like I said, my funding has been mostly private. I could not find.
You did some surveys and you provided some information there that does demonstrate that the presumption of compliance does not work.
Does not work, yes.
So I think you're doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone has any questions.
I'm sorry, but I have to. I have another commitment. I'm judging Collier Regional Flood Fair, but I will leave my a pile of cards at the back. So call or email.
Thank you, sir.